गया माहे मुहर्रम हुआ ज़ाका एहतमाम आ गया माहे मुहर्रम हुआ ज़ाका एहतमाम जिंदगी को वक्फ कर दो करबला वालों के नाम Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Mu'mineen, a request to take your seats, and inshallah we're going to begin tonight's program very shortly. Our reciters, please confirm your presence. Brother Ali Natu, if you're in the building, please come forward so we can confirm your presence and recitation for tonight. 1 minute. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. To open tonight's program, we have the young Yusuf Ali and Yahya Ali for the recitation of the Holy Quran. Welcome them with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا وقعت الواقية ليس لوقعتها كاذبة خافضة رافية إذا رجت الأرض رجا وبست الجبال بسا فكانت هباء منبثا وكنتم أزواجا ثلاثة فأصحاب الميمنة ما أصحاب الميمنة وأصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب المشأمة والسابقون السابقون أولئك المقربون في جنات النعيم ثلة من الأولين وقليل من الآخرين على سور مخضونة متكئين عليها متقابلين يطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون بأكواب وأباريك وكأس من معين لا يصدعون عنها ولا ينزفون وفاكهة مما يتخيرون وحور عينا كأمثال اللؤلؤ صدق الله العلي العظيم.
MashaAllah. Nice job. Accent. Another nice and loud salawat for the young Ali brothers. Allah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. MashaAllah. To start off our poetry segment, let me invite Ahmad Bandeli. Welcome him with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. Today I'll be reciting a poem called Our Oath from the book Tears from Heaven's Flowers. Muharram being a month to reflect and everything, this poem is more like a promise and just a good time to reflect over this month and what we could get out of it. Our Oath. With every moment that comes to pass, with every breath before our last, with every tear our cheeks embrace, with the mercy that we are blessed with, the divine grace, we swear an oath that by the Lord's name we will not forget Hussein. We swear by the moments before Adam approached the tree, by the name he taught the angels, the prophet, and his trustees, by the unified worship before ego engulfed the jinn, by the holy lights purified from sin, we swear that we will never forget Hussein. We swear by the ark built by the hands of Noah, by the creatures that boarded the ark, two of every creation, by he who created them and gave them a soul, by the whispers that protected the ark from the rains of damnation, we swear that we will never forget Hussein, the ark of salvation. We swear by the home that was raised by Abraham, by the vision that he saw in his dream, by the blessing given to him when he was old, by his son who submitted to what his father was told. We swear that we will never forget Hussein. We swear by the birth of the prophetic seal, by the message that he came to reveal, by his family that for 3 days gave up their meal, by the sword made from heavenly steel. We swear we will never forget Hussein. We swear by the battles that took place to defend the truth, by the takbirs roared by the line of Allah at Badr, by the obedient who stayed on the hill at Uhud, by the few who stood strong at Hunain. We swear we will never forget Hussein. We swear by the hands created by the divine, by the hands that beached Khaybar, by the hands kissed by Haydar, by the hands raised by Zainab. We swear that we will never forget Hussein and the severed hands of Abbas. We swear by the 40th day after Ashura, by the head that was returned to Karbala, by the tears shed when the women visited their martyrs, by their sons, brothers, and fathers. We swear that we will never forget Hussein, the master of martyrs. We swear on that by which there is no other, by he who is from the Prophet and the Prophet is from him, by the trust given to Abbas on the day of Ali's death, by the veil of Zainab that was under oppression, by the stance made by Hussein against the false succession. We swear we will never forget Hussein. We swear by the love Layla had for Akbar, by the sandals worn by Qasim, by the soft neck of the youngest martyr, by the eyes of the Prophet's daughter who bore witness to the slaughter. We swear that we will never forget Hussein and that we will chant, breathe, and call, O God, O Zahra. We will never forget Hussein. Our oath, O Zahra, we will never forget Hussein. Salawat.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah for that beautiful recitation. To conclude our poetry program, let me invite Dr. Ali Nathu to the podium. Please welcome him with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
By Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, salawat. The night has fallen on Bainul Haramain. Zainab is crying near Abbas and Hussein. Oppressed and left in shame, all I feel now is pain. Oppressed and left in shame, all I feel now is pain. Bainul Haramain, Bainul Haramain. The heat's unbearable, my grief unstoppable, as I stand all alone by the burning tents. All of the sons are left, laid on the battlefield. Who'll pick their bodies up and bring them back to me? My sons were martyred by the ruthless enemy. O Mother, please come and share this pain with me. On the right, my dear Abbas. On the left, Mawla Hussein, Bainul Haramain. Zainab is crying near Abbas and Hussein. Oppressed and left in shame, all I feel now is pain. Oppressed and left in shame, all I feel now is pain. Bainul Haramain, Bainul Haramain. The voice of Layla echoes through the night. Where is my Akbar? Did you see him fight? I did, oh Layla. I held him as he died. And only Allah knows my heartfelt sacrifice. I'll join you soon, my son, this is my sacred vow. Akbar, my son, how will I live without you now? Zainab is grieving too. She feels enduring pain. Bainul Haramain, Bainul Haramain. Zainab is crying near Abbas and Hussein. Oppressed and left in shame, all I feel now is pain. Oppressed and left in shame, all I feel now is pain. Bainul Haramain, Bainul Haramain. The land of Karbala, the desert and the heat, the final resting place of Abbas and Hussein. The earth is shaking, the skies are crying, the world is mourning, they're enduring pain. Zainab is crying for her brothers and her sons. Her tears are flowing with the setting sun. Her heart is aching for her Abbas and Hussein. Bainul Haramain, Bainul Haramain. The night has fallen on Bainul Haramain. Zainab is crying near Abbas and Hussein. Oppressed and left in shame, all I feel now is pain. Oppressed and left in shame, all I feel now is pain. Bainul Haramain, Bainul Haramain. Salawat.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Nath, for that wonderful recitation. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight is the 7th in this Muharram series of majalis here at Masjid-e-Ali alayhi salam. Tonight's majlis is sponsored by the following families: Dr. and Mrs. Asad Sadiq, Dr. and Mrs. Zaki Sadiq, Mr. and Mrs. Muslim Hassam, Mr. Hassan and Mrs. Narjis Mujtaba, Mr. Shabir and Dr. Rafia Khaku, Dr. Anwar Al-Haddawi and family, Mr. Yasir Rizvi and Mrs. Samira Akhlaq, Mr. Sohail and Mrs. Hina Naqvi, Mr. Rafi and Mrs. Harim Raza, Sania Zahra Ali and Raza Ali, the Sanego family, as well as SNS Motorsports. We remember their marhumin with a Suratul Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. In these holy nights of Muharram, as we commemorate the stance against injustice, we remember those who are suffering injustices of their own, abroad with our brothers and sisters in Palestine, and here at home, those who are ill and in need of du'as for their health, including Sayyid Mehdi Shah, Aliza Rizvi, Shahnaz Bukhari, Nuzhat Hussain. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them with a speedy recovery, inshallah. Please recite with me verse number 62 of Surah An-Naml together 5 times. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 وَيَجْعَلُكُمْ خُلَفَاءَ الْأَرْضِ أإله مع الله قليلا ما تذكرون الصلوات على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, few announcements before we proceed with tonight's keynote speaker and majlis. For our children, I just want to remind and underscore a few opportunities that we have at the masjid. One, we've been announcing about the Al-Mahdi workshops. As you know, if you have kids under the age of 11, take advantage, 9:30 to 10:30. If you have or know kids with special needs, there's special needs workshops this weekend, meaning tomorrow and Sunday. You can speak with Brother Mazhar Ali Dina or Sister Saima Taber for more information. Also for kids and parents with kids, for your convenience, I know being in the main hall can be tough, be it for the brothers and the sisters. Kids need a place to move and to run. We do have the ladies' hall next door if you have those with small kids. And this is for fathers with kids, mothers with kids. We have it partitioned next door. So take advantage for your convenience and your comfort. This goes for both the brothers and the sisters. Finally, our young Quran reciters this morning are a product, or this evening are a product of the Quran and Akhlaq Academy. We have it here at the masjid on a weekly basis. You can speak with Brother Zain Ali and Brother Hassan Qadim, and they can give you some more information on how to join, inshallah. Mu'mineen, mark your calendars for the following. Tomorrow is IMI's health screen for the community at large. This starts at 7:30. They have a variety of specialties. You and your families should definitely take advantage. Come at about an hour before Salat al-Maghrib and get yourselves checked out, inshallah. Day after tomorrow, we have our annual Muharram blood drive on Sunday. This is 10 to 4. You need to register. Walk-ins are welcome, but registration is going to help streamline things for you. You can see me at the desk. Also, if you're not sure if you're eligible to donate blood, I can answer those questions for you as well. The following Saturday, so not tomorrow, but next Saturday, we are going to have a Q&A for the community at large with Dr. Ali Al-Hilli. This begins with Salat al-Dhuhrain. I encourage you to come prepared with questions, and we look forward to having you participate Saturday the 20th. As Dr. Ali Al-Hilli underscored in his lecture, take advantage of our school, our full-time Islamic school, the Sadiq School. Registration is open from ages 2.5 up to the 4th grade. You can visit their website for more information and give your child an excellent education in an Islamic environment. Finally, Mu'mineen, just a few upcoming important announcements. The next few nights are going to be busy and packed. There's going to be a lot of people. So a few reminders. Number one, if you can carpool, please carpool. We have parking, but on the day of Ashura and nights before, it can get difficult. Carpool as best you can. You never know. There's going to be some rain. The best thing we can do is limit the number of cars that are coming in. That's number one. Number two, I humbly request that you cooperate with our volunteers and our security staff. At the end of the day, they're doing their job. They're here to make sure that everyone is safe in and safe out. No one is blocked. There's no emergencies. Please do not take anything personally. If they're guiding you in a certain direction, if they're telling you not to park somewhere, they are doing their job, and they are our eyes on the outside. Please cooperate with them, and we appreciate that in advance. Number 3, there's been a lot of requests for bringing in niyaz and tabarruk on these upcoming nights. If you are bringing in something, please make sure it's packed. That way it's easy to distribute. The problem with open things, they can spill, it can become a hazard. So make sure things are packed, and then inshallah we can help facilitate. Finally, for our newcomers and our regulars, on your way out, stop by the desk at the front. We have all the information you need about our cemetery that the land that we just bought, about our schools, about the blood drive, about our youth programming. Take advantage, and you can see me after the program, inshallah, and I can help with more information. Mu'mineen, at this time, I request that your cell phones are silenced. Parents, please ensure that your children are seated with you throughout the duration of the majlis. If you need to take advantage of the next hall, please do so. And I request that you move forward closer to the podium as I request our respected guest scholar, Dr. Ali Al-Hilli, to recite tonight's majlis addressing 3 ways to stay married. Welcome him with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الأول بلا أول كان قبله، والآخر بلا آخر يكون بعده، الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين، وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين. وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك وأناخت برحلك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت، وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. Together we recite السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. To get you warmed up, we need to recite it again. السلام على وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Enlighten your souls and hearts with the recitation upon Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. The second recitation for the love of Fatima al-Zahra. And the third recitation for the love of the awaited Savior, Imam al-Mahdi, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif. Ahsantum. My dear sisters and my dear brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Tonight is the 7th night of our series of talks where we have given the example of this individual called Afdal, this individual who is struggling in life. He is working extra shifts to save a lot of money. He has difficulty in sleeping. He has mental health problems. Modernity and post-modernity, as we explained in our first lecture, is affecting his life. It's affecting his relationship with his family. It's affecting his relationship with society in general. And so far, we've taken different sections of Afdal's life, and we've tried to provide some sort of solutions to them. So what we did was we delved into his heart. We provided Afdal with a way to try to observe his thoughts, manage his thoughts, understand what's the relationship between his thoughts and his soul. And we talked about the thoughts that come as a result of the shaitan, come a result of your nafs in different parts of your nafs. And we redirected him also to the pure Tawheed. And we looked at the Tawheed of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn salamullahi alayh. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And we tried to explain that in order for us to reach that particular stage of the Tawheed of Abu Abdullah, we've got to make sure that the sanctuary belongs to Allah in our heart, completely, just God. And we explained how Afdal can do that. Also, we provided him with ways to manage his mental health through faith. We've also provided him with a proposal into how he can balance his life. And yesterday we gave him advice into how to raise his children, considering all the challenges that he is facing. And of course, Afdal is an example of an individual in our communities. And it's vital that we learn from Abu Abdullah al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi. We learn from the Ahlul Bayt salamullahi alayhim and the Quran how we can develop. Now I really want to tell you this on this particular night. And I mentioned it briefly today in the khutbah, the Jum'ah prayers. I am not here to stand here and give you a talk, a lecture. And I actually genuinely don't thrive to do such a thing. My expertise is engagement. I love to talk to you guys. I love to engage with you. But of course, because of the format of the majlis, and that is required, and it's essential we do this, then that doesn't give me the opportunity to engage with you. But for me, I would love for every single one of us, and trust me, I am the first here, to take something from these particular majalis. And I genuinely beg you, because we need to develop as a community. And I keep on saying this, and I apologize if I keep on repeating this, that if we want to embark on that arc of salvation that Hussein salamullahi alayhi guarantees, and it takes us towards our 12th Imam, and if we want to be at least, having the ambition of being the soldiers of our 12th Imam, then we've got to take something out of the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah. We cannot leave on the day of Ashura, when everyone will come here, we will recite the story of the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah, and then go back and then be the same people as we were before Muharram. That's not possible. If that's the case, then we have failed, and I have failed. I will tell you from now, if the community does not take a step further to development, does not take a step further towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, get closer to the Ahlul Bayt and the Quran, and try to reach that ark of salvation, then I have failed. So please don't let me fail. Take Afdal as an example of where you can take from Afdal's life and implement it. As you've seen, our majalis, most of it is practical, and intentionally so that we can take something out of this and really try to get closer and closer to the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, one of the issues that Afdal does also face, my dear brothers and sisters, is his relationship with his wife. And when he got married, he chose his wife mainly based on her looks. Okay? And based on her looks, and she was comfortable with him as well, so they got married the cultural way. And then the first 2 years was all, as we say back in England, lovey-dovey. They loved each other. I love you, you love me. It was all that particular romantic relationship where he comes back from home and he tells her, I love you. She says, I love you back. But after 2 years or something, after they had children, that love started to fade away. Yes? And then the conflict started to be presented in their marriage. And he started to work more and more. They started to have a busy life. She was also working part-time, as well as having all the chores to do at home. She was being very stressed as well. And when they talk about these particular problems, usually it sparks a conflict, and they have a fight. Now, it is important that we realize that if we are the community of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, you are the best of communities. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. Khayra ummatin. The best of communities. We don't compare ourselves with community X and Y, because we have the thaqalain, don't we? We have the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, the two really valuable tools that we have. And so we want to become the best of communities, but the community will not become the best if the family units are problematic. There's problems within the family units, because it all starts in the family. If the family, there is problems with it, then the community, there will be problems. So we can't expect to have this khayra ummah if there are conflicts and problems within our families. So we've got to start at home. We've got to try to fix our issues at home. And I don't mean by fix it where everything just suddenly becomes all great. Of course, we will still continuously have conflicts. But vitally, we've got to realize that there are conflicts and do something about it. Not live every day with these conflicts and just pray for the next day that it gets better. Yes? And so therefore, with your permission tonight, my dear brothers and sisters, we will try and look at 3 ways to stay married. Because I titled this talk, Staying Married. Because unfortunately, we are facing many divorces in our communities. We are facing huge amounts of problems. In fact, there are people who are taking when they face problems and they want to get divorced, they are taking it to courts. And they're taking their cases to courts. Their problem with children, they make these particular laws. We have a law in the United Kingdom called the non-molestation order. This non-molestation order, any of the couple, usually is the woman, she calls the police and she says, I want to put into effect this law of non-molestation order. They say, no problem at all. Any evidence? Why? he says, well, he's actually abusing me. There's not much evidence, but the police will take her word, and then we will ask the husband or the wife, mostly it's the husband, to get out of the house. He's not allowed to go inside the house. And then if he breaches this non-molestation order, then quickly he goes into prison. Until a court case, they give them a date where they provide the evidence. But on trying to call the police and say, I want to make sure that I have this non-molestation order, there's not much evidence you can bring. This is in the United Kingdom. There must be something similar here. We are trying to, the conflicts have reached a stage where it is, we are trying to get help from the police and the courts. This is not the ummah of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. It really isn't. And so therefore, it's vital for us, if we want to embark on that arc, we need to try to resolve our problems internally. Sallu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Can I ask everyone to get up, please, and come closer to me, because there are people who are trying to come in from the back. Sallu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Come closer. Ahsantum. There is an example actually of a couple who who are married for 90 years. They're thought to be the longest married couple in the world. Karam and Katri Chand. Karam died at 110 years old, and Katri died at 104 years old. And, they got married for 90 years. Now I ask you, for those who are married, would you want to stay married for 90 years? Perhaps you say, no, that's just too much for me. But even so, there were people who lived happily for such a long time. And when you go back to, all the Eastern countries, and you find those individuals who have lived for long, they honestly live a very simple life. It's when we introduce complexities in our world, in our lives, that makes our relationships quite difficult. But when you live a simple life, then honestly it reduces the conflicts. The importance of a family unit is given clearly from this hadith by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Al-Kafi, volume 5, page 328, he says, there is nothing to Allah, Almighty and glorious, more beloved than the house which is developed in Islam by marriage. There's nothing more beloved to God than the house which is developed in Islam by marriage. And there is nothing to Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, more abhorrent than the house which is ruined in Islam by separation or divorce. And if we truly want to make sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves this particular house, then we've got to make sure this marriage thrives. We've got to make an effort in order for us to do so. The survey company YouGov in the United States, they conducted an online survey in 2022. Surveyed 1,000 US citizens, adult citizens, in terms of how they argue in a relationship. They found that over 90% of those in serious relationships, they reported arguing with their partner. 90%. So it's really a high number of couples, they have serious disagreements. And also, what about common arguments? Communication, it topped the list. The lack of communication between the two. And many said about the tone of voice when one another speak to each other. When one speaks to each other, it's about the tone of voice. Repetitive arguments, half of them, nearly half, they said they argued about the same things repetitively. It's all the same thing. If you just let's be conscious here. I don't want to give another talk of marriage. You've heard of many talks. Let's just be serious here. Have you analyzed what actually the things that you are arguing about? If you write them down on a daily basis, this is for the sisters and brothers. If you write them down on a daily basis, for those of you who are married, of course, then you'll probably find a lot of them are repetitive things. Then go and look for, try to find some sort of a middle ground for these repetitive arguments. It's vital to become conscious of this. What about the length of arguments? 20% they reported arguments sometime lasting for more than 24 hours. And some of us, when we have conflicts and we have fights with our spouses, we go to sleep and we don't talk to each other. And I ask you this question. What happens if you don't wake up? If you die? Or your spouse dies? That means the last thing you and your spouse did was have a fight and not talk to each other. Do not go to bed without trying to resolve your issue. And the location of arguments is important. Do you argue in front of your children or not? Around a third with children under 18 argued in front of them. So, main issue, I believe, and before we go into these 3 ways to stay married, is the main issue, my dear brothers and sisters, and I will tell you this from experience in working in the community. Okay? So, just to give you a very brief background of what I've done, and I'm not a great example in the community, but I try my best, is that I left I used to, before, quite a time ago, I used to work in science. I left my science job in order for me to do this particular job in addition to work in the community. So I left it completely because I saw there is so many challenges we have in our communities. And now we run a center back in London. So I work full time for that particular center. I'm the director there. And what's important is we realize that the conflicts between spouses is top of the list. If you were to come and ask me, as someone who works in the community, say, what's the biggest challenge you are finding now? I tell you the differences, the conflicts, the problems between the spouses. And so what we've done is we said the problem here is we've got to try to resolve these problems between the spouses, but let's try to go to the root of the problem. The root of the problem, in our humble opinion, is the spouse selection. Is how we select our spouses. And this is, of course, too late for those of us who are married, of course, yes, don't think about it. Anyway. But it's important that for those individuals who are single, I can see some people who are single here, that you choose the right spouse. Now, my topic isn't, I've talked about majalis before about choosing the right spouse, but I'll tell you one thing we have done back at Darul Islam Center. It's called Darul Islam Center in London. We've developed an app or a website called Darmatch. This particular website takes your details and also takes the details of who you would like your spouse to be or to have, what characteristics to have. But importantly, there is no photo upload. So you do not choose your spouse according to how they look. In the first instance, we give opportunities for people to come and sit with each other without even knowing how they look like, without even knowing how the other person looks like. So once you actually might talk to them, and if you see a photo of someone, maybe initially you say, if this works from both genders, yeah? If a woman looks at a man photo and say no, and vice versa. Mostly it's the men, they look at a photo of the woman and they say, no, I don't really like her face, right? But, and yes, you may laugh, but people do that, right? But what if you actually sit down with them, and photos don't really give you a good idea of how they really look, by the way. What if you sit down with them one-to-one in supervision at our center and actually start to talk to each other? And maybe you'll start to love what's inside. And that is the most important thing later on. It's all at the start it's all really nice, the first few years, but then it gets very, very normal. Age sort of takes over and it gets very, very normal. But the heart does not change, or rarely changes, but the face changes. So my advice to those individuals who are looking to get married, first marriage, is that what you must do is do not base your judgment on looks. Try to give the other person an opportunity. Meet with them, talk to them. Of course, looks is important. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's vital we give each other opportunity and do not choose just based on looks, on how glamorous this person looks like. Okay? Because later on in your life, you might regret it. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So, with your permission, inshallah, we will be going through 3 ways to stay married. Now, let's go back to the Holy Quran. What does the Holy Quran tell us? Let us try to reflect together on this, one of the nights of Muharram. Let's try to reflect. Take some deep breaths, please. If you're sitting uncomfortably, you may stand and sit down if you like. But let's try to reflect. Let's try to contemplate on this particular verse that you've all heard about. In Surah Ar-Rum, verse number 21, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ, one of his signs, the signs and the miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes? أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُمْ, he has created for you, مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ, from your own kind, أَزْوَاجًا, yes? A pair, so a couple. Now he goes into these beautiful characteristics. So he said, I have created, and one of my signs, one of my miracles is I've created you in pairs. So a husband marries a man, by the way, marries a woman. A woman marries a man. That's it. Yes? A man, let me repeat it again. A man marries a woman marries a man. Yes? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created that pair and he says, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. Now we've all heard of this, but what does actually sukoon means? What does لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا? So that you can do what? Find that peace and tranquility. He says it is sort of a guarantee that if you come together as a couple, there is this sukoon that will be established within that relationship. You might be sitting there and thinking, I found no sukoon in my relationship. But it's vital that you try to look for that sukoon. Unless you saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not right in astaghfirullah in what he's saying. Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in this particular verse that I have created that sukoon. I will create that sukoon within you. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. Now the sukoon, if you go back to Arabic language, yes, a second is what? Is reside, as a place to stay. Okay? And also second is, sukoon is a place where you sort of stop, place to stay, comfort, and it's about getting comfort from each other. And what's important is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, I want you to give each other this comfort, this second, this warmth, this tranquility, this peace. Allah says, I want you to give each other this. I will also help you, but I want you to give to each other this sukoon. Now, how many of us actually strive to give that sukoon to my spouse? No, but it's always about me and my ego, etc. It's about I want this. And we'll go over certain examples of conflicts. But it's about attempting to give that sukoon. Make this your mission. Make this your mission of giving this sukoon to your wife, or the wife giving the sukoon to the husband. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ, and then he's created in this marriage When you attempt to put sukoon, He's created what? بينكم what? Mawaddatan wa rahmah. Now what is mawadda? Mawadda is this affection, this deep love. It's not hub. He could have said hubbun wa rahmah. No, mawadda is even deeper than hub. How do we establish that deep love? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, yes, deep love. But if you've loved someone, what? You will also forgive them. Wa rahmah. Yes? And also, it's vital that when we think about it, a lot of our conflicts, when we get upset with each other, say, oh, you said this, no, you said that, you did this and you did that. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you've got to create that sukoon within you, and I've created that love and rahmah, because you need to forgive, so therefore you will love. And when you love, you will forgive. And when you forgive, you will love. Yes, there is that. We've got to be conscious of those particular meanings. And then, we stop then, and we don't continue in the verse. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, beautifully says, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. These are the miracles, these are the signs of God for those who what? Do what? Tell me. What do? يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. So you will only establish this sakina. You will only get this جَعَلَ بَيْنَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً if you are one of those qawm who understands and comprehends this miracle from God. This what? The sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're someone who contemplates and reflects. يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. It doesn't come out just like, yeah, okay, I got married, yeah, then what? Oh my God, this is so difficult, married life. You got to give an effort. Both of you. You got to give an effort to make this work. The problem is that our youth give up very quickly. They say, oh, they come to my office, they come to, in London, I'm sure the Maulana here as well, the resident alim, keeps on getting lots of cases where, I don't like my wife, we have this conflict. Baba, have you given it an effort? Give an effort for it to work. You've got to give an effort for it to work. يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. This is a miracle from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a project that is blessed by God. When you said, when she says, زَوَّجْتُكَ نَفْسِي, this way you've taken permission from Allah. This is a project that is blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't just give up very quickly. Or of course we talk about red flags later on. If there is a red flag, such as physical abuse and things like that, then it's a different matter. But we're talking about other cases, which is majority of the cases, where there is disagreements and they give up. It's vital that we give an effort, my dear brothers and sisters. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Can I also again have you to get up and come forward, please, so we can allow people to come closer to me, don't worry. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Center. So that's the first way. The first way is try to establish this sukoon between you two. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help you in establishing this sukoon, and so that you can also establish this mawadda wa rahma, and you gotta give an effort in your relationship. Now the second thing is when time goes on, remember Afdal's case, when time went on, this love started to fade. And as our king said once in the United Kingdom, he said, whatever love means. Okay, but we know that love, there is this connection between the two couple, and because they care for each other, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you will forgive each other, so there is that love between the two. So it's important that you do a love check. And I truly hope that people go back today. It doesn't necessarily need to be today, but in the coming days and months perhaps, to do a love check with your wife. Be very honest. Importantly, we've got to communicate. Problems, and we'll talk a bit about communication later, is that communication is weak. A lot of couples, or a good amount of couples, they don't talk to their spouses openly and freely. They rather talk to their friends openly and freely. But they're supposed to be your best friend. Your spouse is supposed to be, once you establish this sakina, yes, your spouse is your best friend. No other person is your best friend. So it's vital that you have opened that communication. So I've always looked at the issue of love in a way of a triangle. You love your spouse because he or she, they love God. So you have Allah, and then you have the husband, and then you have the wife. They are all connected in this triangle. That's the way I've always looked at it. You love her because she loves God. You love him. I'm talking to the sisters. You love him because he loves God. That is how the love must be sustained. Love has to always go through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's in the middle. I am so, because of my spirituality, because of my love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and because you love God, then I love you as well. That has to be established. But it's important we do a love check between each other as well, because in the triangle, there is a connection as well between the husband and the wife, and also the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the connection between, of course, to strengthen that connection with Allah, we've got to do all the stuff that we've been talking about before, but also connection between you and your spouse is to make sure that you measure your love tank. There is an individual, you might have heard about him, and if you've heard about him, it's good to hear about him, about this issue again. Dr. Gary Chapman with the love languages, if you've heard about it. It's really useful, by the way. If you go and do a test, a love language test, and I've done it, and actually it's quite accurate between the couple, okay? And he says that everybody generally has their own primary love language for receiving love and giving love. And so finding the love tank, how full is your love tank? Is it half full? Is it on the bottom? Is it quite full? So you've got to try to measure it. And what are these love languages? What is your spouse's love language? You don't find your own love language. You find your spouse's love language so that you can practice or speak the language of your spouse. Do you understand that? You've got to understand and comprehend the love language of your spouse. Once you find the love language of your spouse, then you start practicing that particular language. Then he or she will start to love you more because you start to talk about their love. Yes? So let's go through these 5 languages very quickly. Number 1 is words of affirmation, praise. Let me tell you a story, and it's a personal story. I don't mind sharing personal stories. Once, I think this is my love language, by the way. It's the words of affirmation. But words of affirmation, not from anyone. Okay, if you come and tell me a praise, okay, thank you, I'm not going to love you. But if for my wife to tell me words of affirmation, yes, increases my love towards her. I hope she's hearing this, right? So therefore, once in our living room, I decided, it was, I think during COVID, my wife is a doctor, so she was doing her doctor duties, and I decided to paint the room. And I started painting the whole room, and I continuously kept on having thoughts about what would she think about the room? Would she think this is a beautiful room? And what is she going to say? When she comes back from home, is she going to say, oh, this is beautiful, well done, mashallah, you're an amazing guy, etc.? I needed that. I need that. As a husband, I need my wife to give me those words of affirmation. That increases my love towards her. Yes? And that's okay. That's no problem. This is me and my wife. Yes? It's not being arrogant in front of everyone. I want people to praise me. That's a problem, which I don't, by the way. But for my wife, yes, I need it from my wife. So she came back, and I continuously started doing. She gave sort of a praise, okay, a praise. It was sufficient for me. But I continuously then after that reflected, and I actually told her that I kept on thinking, what are you going to say? Because it's important for me, these particular words of affirmation. And it made me think about these love languages. It is my love language. When she praises me of doing something in the house or whatever, then I actually do value it a lot and I increase my love towards her. So assess whether your love language or your spouse's love language is the words of affirmation. The second one is acts of service. For example, maybe for the husbands, if you allow for the wife to go out with her friends, etc. Of course, doing a halal way, whatever possible, and you take care of the children. That's an act of service. Maybe that's her love language. She likes to sometimes go out with her friends, or you provide an act of service. Maybe a chore in the house. You go and do a chore in the house. That's an act of service. Then she will love you more for that. Yes. Another one is affection. Affection. Remember yesterday or the day before we kept on talking about the hugs of the. It's important. Sometimes they say there's been studies of the levels of oxytocin between couples. Yes? The level of, oxytocin is the love hormone. How do you increase the oxytocin level, the love hormone, between a couple? 20-second hug. 20-second hug. Every single day between you and your spouse. A 20-second hug. They've shown not less than 20 seconds. They've measured this scientifically, and there are studies to show this. A 20-second hug between a couple, yes, will increase the level of oxytocin. At least, try it. Try it and find out. So that could be the love language. Number 4 is quality time. One of the things I will tell you of my personal experience, one of the things that I also has improved my relationship is this quality time with my wife. So when you go out, for example, go out for a dinner, but not with children. Try to get some babysitting or whatever you call them these days. Try your best. I know it's difficult for some people. They don't have care for their children, but try your best to go out one-to-one. It really, really helps. Yes? And even better, try to go for a short trip, like a weekend, 3 days. Renew those honeymoon period. Remember that honeymoon time? Yes? Try to renew that. That's number 4. Number 5 is gifts. And gifts is when, of course, your spouse will always love a gift. So for me, when I come to America, what am I going to bring back to my wife? Yes? Perfume, whatever, right? But it's very important that you make sure that it's not something that will backfire. So I know a particular couple, they've had problems, and she always used to say, he used to bring me flowers. I don't like flowers. I don't like flowers. I actually don't like him bringing me flowers. But he continuously brought flowers and brought flowers and brought flowers. That's actually backfiring. She doesn't want any gifts. I know another case where she doesn't want any gifts. Doesn't want. Look, that's not my love language. My love language is something else. If you bring me gifts, that's actually going to backfire here. I'm going to not love you. So you got to make sure that these particular cases you pay attention to very well. So I invite you to go and take an assessment. There's a test, the love language test, you and your spouse, and implement it. And it really does help to increase the love between the two. And it's important when we look at the ahadith, there's plenty of ahadith about love, but and also about trying to be gentle. Yes, there is, when we talk about the husband giving a gift to their wives, there is a narration from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And I'm sure all the men are not going to like me after this, but I purposely put this in there for us to give a better of effort, that the Prophet expects us what? He says, the best of men are those who are the most lenient with people and the most generous with their women. Do not be bakhil, stingy. Yes? When you go out, yes, of course, find out if that is her love language, or she's okay with gifts. I know, for example, my wife loves flowers. Yes? So find this out. What's her favorite chocolate? What's her favorite, etc. So when you go out for work, and sometimes renew that love by bringing a gift. The Prophet ﷺ says, the lenient with people and most generous with their women. Now, number 2, so there's 3 ways we said to, number 3, the 3 ways to stay married. 1 is so establish that sakina. Number 2 is do a love check. Number 3, my dear brothers and sisters, is accept, and this is vital. I just want you to focus on this if you have been quite sort of dozing away. It's vital that you focus on the following. I actually do see some sleepy faces, so I'm going to do what I did yesterday. If you don't mind just getting up and then sitting back down. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Yeah, stretch a bit, stretch. Please sit down, please sit down. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ahsantum. Inshallah, it won't take long. So the other one, the third way to stay married is vital, and I really hope that you can take this seriously. So there is an individual called John Gottman. He's an expert here in America about relationships, and he's come up with a really interesting theory, and it's very applicable as well. It's not just a theory, and he's divided our conflicts between solvable and unsolvable. Solvable and perpetual, he calls them. So every single conflict that you have with your spouse is either a solvable one, you can solve it, okay, a conflict that doesn't have a deep meaning, or it's a conflict that actually is not solvable. Whatever you do, you can't solve it. And just appreciating and understanding that is a way forward. Because sometimes when we have conflicts with our spouses, we say, well, how come I want her to be like me? I want her to be I want her to be as intellectual as me. Or the other way around, she might say, I want him to be as intellectual as me. I want him to be more religious. I want him to be as religious as me. I want her to be sort of more attractive or whatever. There's always what we want. Yes? And sometimes certain issues are not what you want. You've got to understand that. So, he talks about solvable and unsolvable. Those solvables, conflicts, they have no deep meaning. And you can actually solve them with problem-solving techniques and compromises. So, for example, if Awwal, he knew one of his chores at home, he must take the as you say, we say rubbish, say the garbage outside. Yes, every Monday evening he has to take the garbage outside. And then he continuously forgets. His wife gets annoyed. She says, well, I've told you, you've got to do this every time. And they have a conflict. Is this a solvable or unsolvable? It's a solvable one. You've got to make sure that you put an alarm, Afdal. Always remind yourself and have that communication with your wife. So it's a solvable one. It's not that a big deal. Also, certain social activities. One spouse wants to spend more time with friends. The other says, well, no, you've got to be at home. You've got to make a schedule, come to compromise by balancing, social outings, etc. The unsolvable are the ones that we want to focus on, what he calls perpetual conflicts. They are the deep-seated issues that stem from differences in personalities, differences in values or life goals. Let me give you examples of that. So, for example, punctuality. One is always late, the other is always early. That's an unsolvable, I'm afraid. When someone you've got an appointment, you're going to a friend's house. The husband is waiting in the car with the children, the wife is still getting changed. For example, yes, or the other way around. I got to always do other way around in case I get something thrown at me. For example, finance. One of them is a spender, and I'm not saying which gender. One of them is a spender, the other one is not. The other one is a bit more, because it's the way that they were brought up. maybe his parents, for example, the husband, his parents didn't spend much. And also they saved a bit. They taught their children not to spend much, even if they have money, but they told them not to spend much. But no, his wife, her family, when she was young, they used to spend a lot, spending a lot. I'm not saying who's right or who's wrong. They used to spend a lot. So when they come together, she's used to spending. So she doesn't think twice before she buys this particular thing. But when he sees the credit card statement and he sees, oh, this, he comes and tells her, what's going on? You bought all these things. And she says, yeah, well, but it's how she was programmed when she was young. And unfortunately, this is an unsolvable. You can't solve this. I mean, you can try to come up with ideas, but it's ingrained in in an individual, where someone doesn't spend much, and you can't make that person spend a lot every time because they just can't spend much. And the other person who always spends, you can't just suddenly tell them to stop. It's an unsolvable. Another one is an individual who's extroverted, an individual who's introverted. Yes? So for example, for me, I think I am extroverted, my wife is introverted. It's an unsolvable. You can't change, or maybe some people will argue that it's difficult. When I say unsolvable, it's either unsolvable or it's very, very difficult to solve. That's what I mean. Okay? So you can't change me to become an introverted person. It's very difficult. And I can't change her to be an extroverted. These are unsolvable issues. When conflicts arise because of my extroverted character and because of her introverted character, it's an unsolvable issue. And also in terms of religiosity. One is more religious than the other. Some argue this is unsolvable. And so what he found is he found 69, he did a long study, he found that 69% of conflicts are solvable or unsolvable, are actually unsolvable. 69% of the conflicts that in his study are actually unsolvable. And so therefore we're getting lots of problems, etc. We've got to appreciate and understand that a lot of our conflicts, 2/3 of our conflicts with our spouses are actually unsolvable. So what do we do? I mean, should we just call it a day and just say these are unsolvables? No, there are ways to try to understand and comprehend, and we can try to see ways around it. Number one is we've got to acknowledge, my dear brothers and sisters, that we are two very different beings. A man is different to a woman. A woman is different to a man. Full stop. We're different. In spirituality, under the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are the same. Allah does not distinguish between a man and a woman in terms of his adala. Okay, his justice. His justice is the same. He will treat us exactly the same. Our soul's structure, our hearts, etc., internally, we are all the same. But behaviorally, we are very different people. As that famous book says, one is from Mars and that one is from Venus. It's true. And brains are different as well. So men, for example, they show less emotional effectiveness. Women, they generally show more emotional expressiveness. Yes? Men, for example, prefer a more analytical and logical approach to problem solving. Women, for example, a more holistic, intuitive approach to problem solving. And so it's vital that we appreciate this. We understand. You as the husband, you can't make your wife to be the same as you. It's difficult. It's not possible because she is a very different person in terms of behaviorally. And as the wife, you can't make your husband the same. You've got to appreciate that and comprehend that we are two different in terms of behaviors. And the second point is have that constructive dialogue. Yes, these are unsolvables, but it doesn't stop you from having that communication, that constructive dialogue. And again, communication is different in men and women. Men, they tend to be more direct and task-orientated. Women, they tend to be more expressive and relationship-orientated in their communication. But still, regardless, you're understanding each other. And this is my point here. We've got to understand each other, comprehend each other. and try to understand the way that we communicate. So therefore, you got to be emotionally intelligent. This is vital, that emotional intelligence, you've got to be individual who is emotionally intelligent, so you understand the emotions of your wife, or the wife understands the emotions of the husband. Become emotionally intelligent. And in terms of communication, and I've tried this out, using the speak and listen technique. Try this out. It's really, really a good way to try to communicate. When you had a conflict, give each other, then once conflict, you come together and things like that. If it's an unsolvable, come and say, look, I'm going to give you 2 minutes or 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you want, to speak about how you feel. Talk to me how you feel. And then you'll give me 5 minutes until I will say how I feel. But in this 5 minutes, do not say you. Do not say, you did this to me, you said this to me. Do not point fingers, because that's when you point fingers at anyone. And if there's one thing you want to take out of this talk, take this. Do not, in your relationship, when you have a conflict, do not always say, you did this, because quickly when you start to say you to a person, they put out their guard and they start defending themselves. They say, no, I didn't do this, because it affects their ego. As human beings, it affects our ego. Always express how you feel. Say, I felt sad. I felt that, the situation wasn't right. I felt, etc. Just express, I felt angry. Yes? I felt overwhelmed. Express how you feel, but do not point fingers. Do this speak and listen technique. Few minutes, she speaks, you listen. Men don't listen well. Yes, we know this very well, don't we? We don't listen very well. Sometimes when they speak to us half, we listen half, and the other half just goes somewhere else. We've got to listen, not hear. There's a difference, you know this. Listen to your spouse, and then you express how you felt. Never do this pointing fingers. This is important. Number 3, try in an unsolvable situation, try to reach a compromise. Compromise does not mean solved. Compromise means you come to a middle ground. And the goal is to remove the hurt after the conflict. It's not try to solve the problem, because you both are hurt inside. And so reaching a compromise, try to find a middle ground. And of course, don't forget the rahmah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, mawaddatan wa rahmah. Forgive, guys. Make sure you give it a good effort. Not, you said, that's it. The first thing I'm going to think about is divorce. I don't want you. I don't like you. Let me go and see the resident alim. Oh, Baba, give it a chance. Ask for forgiveness. Talk about it. Communicate very well. Number 4, and finally, my dear brothers and sisters, is have gratitude. Shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes we forget about the blessings we have. I know this is a point that you all know about. Try to zoom out and look at the overall picture. Yes, this is an unsolvable. But look, if for example, you have children, look at the blessings that Allah has given you. Look at the wealth that Allah has given you. Don't just stick to that particular issue and then the whole world is now completely destroyed because of that conflict you've had. You're miserable, you're depressed, you don't even want to talk to anyone because of that situation. Zoom out a bit and look at the blessings that Allah has given you, the countless blessings, and then you'll be fine. And you say, Shukran lillah. Yes, that was a conflict, it's an unsolvable one, but we'll try to come to a middle ground. But look at the blessings that Allah has given me. There's so much, countless blessings. So I'm just going to let that go. That small conflict that's happened between us. Now, just finally, 2 minutes. If you've reached the end, you continuously try, and I know people, they reach the end and they can't take it anymore. Go back to the Holy Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in chapter 4 verse 35, He says, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ شِقَاقَ بَيْنِهِمَا. If you fear there's a breach between the two, فَابْعَثُوا حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا. Then bring someone from her family and you bring someone from your family. And if you genuinely, and this is a promise from God, if you genuinely want to come together and do islah, إِن يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يوفق الله بينهما. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make sure that the islah happens. You will come together. You will reconcile. Allah says, I will make it happen, but you've got to be serious in reconciliation. And that means compromising. You know, when you come together, sit down in front of a resident alim or whoever the scholar or whoever the mediator, and you say, no, I want this, no, I want that. You've got to compromise. If you seriously want this to work, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will establish this islah. And finally, I want to point out the red flags. It's really important in such talks, we'll point out the red flags. And these are red flags. Beware of the red flags. Red flags is physical abuse is not tolerated at all. Yes? Psychological abuse is not tolerated. Cheating is not tolerated, as well as spiritual abuse. Some people these days, what they're doing is using spirituality, religion to abuse their partners. And say, well, you know, Islam says this. I don't want to give examples because then people will think, but Islam says this, so you can't do this. You know, using religion to justify what you want to do. Yes? And that is called spiritual abuse. Beware of those red flags. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And when it comes to relationships, my dear brothers and sisters, of course, we learn, when we look at the journey of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein salamullah, again, we take certain pieces. We take his tawheed, his love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We take the respect that the children had towards him. We yesterday narrated how the parents, they brought up these particular noble children who fought for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. What amazing children. And as well, when we look at the relationship between couples, we find that this caravan of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein salamullahi alayhi gave us role models of relationships. When we see Abu Abdullah al-Hussein salamullahi alayhi in his relationship with his family, we see the relationship of the ashab. When we saw Habib ibn Mudahir and his relationship with his wife, this beautiful relationship where he said, Hussein is calling for me. She said, go, he is your friend, go and save al-Hussein. And she had this iman, remember that triangle of God. She had this iman, deep iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the mission of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. And she said, go, sacrifice. And when we look at the people in Gaza, and when we look at the people previously in Iraq, when it was Daesh came and caused chaos in Iraq, you see those mothers, they are proud of their children. We see those wives, they are proud of their husbands when they go and become shaheed. And so these are our role models. Sometimes we get distracted by certain conflicts and issues here in the West, but when we look at those individuals in Karbala and more now in modern times in Iraq and Gaza and others, we sometimes become embarrassed. We say, my issue is very simple compared to what they've gone through, but look at the beautiful relationship between the couples. And it was time, my dear brothers and sisters, for the family of Abu Talib, salamullahi alayhi. And they took after the Sahaba, the Ansar of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, salamullahi alayhi, who were martyred, and some of his Ahlul Bayt, it was time for the family of Abu Talib salamullahi alayhi. And al-Hussein salamullahi alayhi, he called out on the family of Abu Talib, saying, be patient, O cousins, by Allah, after today you shall not meet any hardship at all. When you die, you will not meet any hardship. I know this is hard for you. I know what you are going through. But when you die, there will be joy. There will be happiness. You will meet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You meet the Ahlul Bayt. You meet Ali ibn Abi Talib. You meet Imam al-Hasan. You will meet Fatima al-Zahra salamullahi alayha. And it was time for the son, the young son of Al-Imam al-Hasan salamullahi alayhi, in the name of Qasim. Some narrations say that Abu Abdullah al-Hussein salamullahi alayhi, he took the Imam al-Hassan's turban and he put it on the head of Al-Qasim. He took out the shield of Al-Hassan and he gave it to Al-Qasim. He took out the sword of the father of Al-Qasim and he gave it to Al-Qasim. And Al-Qasim salamullahi alayhi, he sought permission from Abu Abdullah. Oh Abu Abdullah, I want to go and fight. I want to go and save the Ummah. I want to reform the Ummah, oh Abu Abdullah. I want to contribute. I want to meet the Prophet. I want to meet I want to meet Ali ibn Abi Talib. I want to meet Fatima al-Zahra. I want to meet my father Al-Hassan. So he came out with a face, narrations say, that looked like a full moon, bearing a sword and wearing a shirt and a mantle. Narrations say that on his feet he wore sandals. And then when he came out, O Mu'mineen, Al-Qasim said, In taraktuni, in tutrikuni, فأنا نجل الحسن صبط النبي المجتمع والمؤتمن هذا حسين كالأسيل المرتهن بين أناس لا سقوا صوب المزن. And so therefore Al-Qasim, when he went out in the battlefield, he tried to strike those enemies. Then the sandal string on his left foot was cut off. Reports say that it wasn't custom on the battlefield to fight barefoot. Then he therefore stopped for a moment to tie his sandal. And narrations say that regarding those enemies as no valuable than his own sandal, he paid no heed to their multitude, feeling unconcerned about their thousands. And O Mu'mineen, take your heart towards Karbala and Al-Qasim. Imagine him tying his sandals while he was doing so. An individual in the name of Ibn Sa'ad attacked him. He hit Al-Qasim with the sword on his head. O Mu'mineen, Qasim fell face forward crying out, Oh uncle, Oh Hussein, Oh uncle, Oh Abu Abdullah. And Al-Hussein approached him. Al-Hussein fought the killer and killed the killer. And then when the dust settled, Al-Hussein saw Qasim lying on the ground. What was the state of Al-Qasim? Al-Qasim was pushing his legs in agony. Al-Hussein said, Away with the people who have killed you, while their opponent on the day of judgment will be your grandfather. Then he said, it is by Allah that you call upon your uncle. You've called upon me to help you, and he cannot answer your call, or that he does not answer it but cannot do much for you, O Qasim. It is a lone voice whose enemies are numerous and whose supporters are few. I have only few supporters left, O Qasim. Then he carried Al-Qasim away, my Mu'mineen. Al-Qasim was on Hussein's chest. His legs were dragged on the ground, and Al-Qasim put the corpse beside some of the Ahlul Bayt who had also been killed. And Hussein put his hand under Qasim's head. He looked at Al-Qasim. He was proud of him. Then he raised his eyes to the heavens and he supplicated. Imagine your Imam, he's slowly being left alone in the battlefield. He said, Oh Allah, Ya Allah, Oh Allah, count their numbers and do not leave any of them alone, and do not forgive a single one of them. And he then spoke to his people and he said, be patient, O cousins, be patient, O my Ahlul Bayt. You shall never meet any hardship after today at all. And as the Arabic poet says, بالأمس كانوا معي واليوم قد رحلوا وخلفوا في سويد القلب نيرانا انذر علي لئن عادوا وإن رجعوا لأزرعن طريق الطف ريحانا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين وإنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. My dear brothers and sisters, تقبل الله. Let's raise your hands in supplication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are very important nights. Take your hearts towards Karbala. Let's look at the Muslim Ummah. There's lots of mu'mineen who are in desperate need of your dua, especially in these beautiful majalis, where insha'Allah the dua is answered. Oh Allah, bihaqqi Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, accept this humble majlis from us, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, bihaqqi Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. I need a very big loud Ya Allah after this one. Oh Allah, bihaqqi Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, free the people of Palestine, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, bihaqqi Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, destroy the filthy evil regime of Zionism, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, bihaqqi Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, give shifa to all those mu'mineen who are suffering here in New Jersey and all around the world, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, bihaqqi Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, make us among the community of Al-Mahdi, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, bihaqqi Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, hasten the arrival of the 12th Imam, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.